Just want to wish you a belated happy birthday.
Welcome to Culture Screen, where we analyze culture. In this episode, we're summarizing the 13th episode from Season 6 of the Sopranos series titled Soprano Home Movies. The episode first aired on April 8th, 2007. In the beginning, we are presented with a flashback of when Johnny Sack was arrested by the FBI. We see that when Tony ran away from Johnny's house, he ended up tossing his firearm in the snow. What we didn't know was that when Tony dropped the gun, a teenager was watching him from a window. The teen saw Tony drop the gun and he went outside to retrieve it. Immediately after grabbing the firearm, the teen accidentally fires a shot into the ground. The teenager eventually gets caught with drugs along with the weapon. In order to get off with a deal, he shares that he obtained the gun after seeing Tony Soprano drop it in the woods behind his home. Following this scene, we see Phil is celebrating with his fellow made men after recovering from his heart attack. Phil, like Tony, has come back from the hospital a changed man, and he no longer wants to live life like he was living before the heart attack. He tells the other men about his exercise routine when Doc Santoro arrives to celebrate with Phil. We see some of the other high-ranking men do not like Doc Santoro, and the viewer sees just how much the men, including Phil, favor Gary over Doc, the more senior mobster. As we catch back up with Tony, we see his criminal case has made the news. He is shown to have been arrested on a gun charge. This infuriates the FBI, as they have been building a case on Tony for years. Now that Tony has made the news, they are certain he will now change up his behavior patterns. As a result, they end up stomping out the case, and they roll the gun charge into the RICO case they are building up against him. Bobby calls Tony, and he invites Tony up to hang out at his lakeside home. As a way of relieving some stress, Tony heads up with Carmela to their cabin. Once Tony meets up with Bobby, Bobby talks to Tony about the life they lead. Bobby gives Tony a rifle as a birthday gift, and they go out on the lake on Bobby's speedboat. Once they reach the center of the lake, Tony commends Bobby for being a good earner, and he talks to him about the inevitable consequences of the life they have chosen. According to Tony, 80% of the time, bosses end up in jail like Johnny Sack. The other 20, they end up dead. Tony also brings up the fact that Bobby has never actually killed someone, whereas his father was known for being a stone-cold killer and was even nicknamed the Terminator. We see how, as soon as Tony and Carmela arrive at the home, Janice begins to probe Tony about how much he has changed. Janice praises Tony and says that their relationship is much better now that Tony is a different man. Tony grows upset at these types of comments because it insinuates that Janice is perfect and Tony is the one with the defects. Tony brushes this off at first, but later on, as the crew begins drinking, Tony and Janice's sibling drama and rivalry begin to surface.
In our neighborhood, people don't get out right away.
Remember, I am summarizing this entire series, as well as other popular works of literature, movies, and TV shows as well. Subscribe and click the bell so you don't miss the next episode or series. Let me know what you'd like me to summarize in the comments section below. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter for additional content, visit our merch store, and support us on Patreon if you can. Doing this helps my channel out tremendously. I thank you for your support.
No risk, no reward.
As we remember from Tony's session with Dr. Melfi, Tony resents Janice having left him to be raised by their mother. As they are gathered for Tony's birthday, Janice gives Tony a Soprano home movie for him to watch later on. This brings back memories for Tony and sets him up for the scene to follow. When they are gathered back inside, and after a few more drinks, Janice tries to share a story from when they were kids. Tony tries to stop Janice from telling the story, but Janice insists, and she shares a story of when her father reacted violently towards their mother, Livia. Tony grows enraged and says he doesn't like sharing those types of stories because it proves that they grew up in an unstable home. As they are playing a board game, Tony begins to insult Janice. And of course, Bobby asks Tony to stop after hearing the second insult. Bobby tells Tony that he is in his home and that he cannot insult his wife that way. Tony apologizes and says that Bobby is right. Tony then proceeds to insult Janice again, a third time, and Bobby swiftly strikes Tony in the face, knocking him clean out of his chair. Tony rolls off the floor and the two end up fighting in the living room. After the two men have stopped fighting, Tony is left bloodied and battered. Immediately after seeing what he just did to Tony, Bobby panics, runs out of his house, jumps into his car, and accidentally backs up into a tree. He exits the car stumbling and apologizes to Tony for what he did. The following day, Carmela and Tony try to leave, but Bobby reminds Tony that they have a scheduled meeting that day. When they head to their meeting, they speak to two Canadians who want to sell Tony expired pharmaceuticals. The men suggest that the drugs can be sold in the United States if the expiration dates are altered on the packages. As Tony is negotiating a fair price with the two men, one of the men says that he cannot make it to their next meeting because he has to accompany his sister to court. The man shares that his sister's husband wants to take her son to live in Winnipeg. Tony suggests that if they can bring their price down to $35,000, he can make his sister's husband vanish. When the men leave, Tony tasks Bobby with the responsibility of whacking the husband. In this scene, we see Tony's ego is still hurt from the beating he took from Bobby. Tony has spent the entire day making excuses for why he lost the fistfight, and he has no real idea about how to get back at Bobby without seeming like a sore loser. Tony ends up giving the job of whacking the husband to Bobby as a way of soiling and tarnishing his soul. Tony also sees it as an opportunity to prove to himself and to Bobby that he is and always will be in control. After the scene, we see Tony is back at being happy for a few hours, and he is finally smiling again. That is until his lawyer calls him up to make him aware of what the FBI has done. Tony's lawyer informs him that although the state dropped the weapons charge against him, the FBI will now be taking on the case and rolling it into their ongoing investigation. This news devastates Tony. As we catch up with Bobby, we see he is deeply depressed, knowing he has to go take a life. Up until this point in the series, we have gotten to know Bobby as a good father, husband, and generally a great man. This is a turning point for Bobby, and it changes how we see him going forward toward the finale. The scene proves that although Bobby is depicted as a nice guy, he is still nonetheless a ruthless criminal, just like the others in his crew. Bobby takes a trip to find the man, and he locates him in a laundromat. After Bobby identifies the man, he takes him out immediately and without hesitation. In the final scene, Bobby heads home to be with his family again, and we see him looking into the woods, perhaps contemplating the conversation he had with Tony on his boat. That was episode number 78, titled Soprano Home Movies. To watch the next or previous episode summary, click on the link in the description or at the end of this video. In the description, you will also find additional links for supporting our channel. I'll see you on the next episode. Goodbye.
You beat me fair and square.
We upload new videos every week, so subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to hit the like button as well. Click the notification bell to be notified of when we upload these videos. See you on the next episode of Culture Screen.